I started listening to the blues at a very, very young age, probably around 6 years old. And how it came into my life is, I mean, obviously I grew up in the 90s. So, you know, that wasn't a type of music in the 90s to listen to. It was the Backstreet Boys and whatever else was going on in the 90s. But my parents listened to the blues, they listened to old school rock and roll, jazz, funk, soul, like roots music in general. And I got into the blues through my parents, really. And it's been a love. And all the music I listened to was guitar-driven music. And the blues in particular always kind of struck a chord with me. And I fell in love with it, like really, really from a young age. It was always a dream to be able to play music and do that for a living and earn money out of it. So I started with like a garage band, like as kids do, like playing out of the garage, playing like the high school battle of the bands. You know, it was never blues when we started. It was kind of like a rock thing, grunge thing when we started. And then, because it was difficult to find people my own age who wanted to play the blues. It was really, really, really difficult, but I eventually did. And then we started slowly getting the blues thing going. And yeah, it took a long time for us to get gigs, you know, because back in South Africa in the 90s, late 90s, no one wanted to listen to the blues. It was, you know, you had to kind of play pop music to make it. But we kind of persevered, and you know, eventually we started getting gigs, and you know, really the ball started rolling, and we started doing it. Yeah. Tonight's going to be my third show in Hungary. The last two were very memorable for me. The first time I ever played here was with Joe Satriani. It was actually the first show I did with Joe Satriani on that tour. So it's always a memorable show for me because it was the first one. We played the Congress Hall or something like that. It was great. It was awesome. It was obviously nerve-wracking playing for the first time in Budapest in front of such a big audience, in front of a Joe Satriani audience. But it was a lot of fun. And then, you know, the second time we were here at the A38, and it was a lot of fun. And just, it's a real pleasure to be back. I've always enjoyed, I mean, the last two times have been a real pleasure playing for Hungarian audiences, yeah. Back home in South Africa, it's a great audience. I find audiences in Europe, though, almost more educated when it comes to the blues. They've been listening to the blues longer. They know what they like, they know what they don't like, and it's a far more discerning audience to play for. But you know, if you get the audience on your side, it's possibly the greatest audience in the world to play for. I find blues rock in particular, Europe's a hotbed for it. You know, in general, I think it's really healthy in Europe, and that includes Hungary too. You know, it's always fantastic, and the audience is always full of energy, and it makes it a lot easier for us to play when there's so much energy from the audience. Yeah. When I write songs, I think everyone writes differently. You know, some people write the lyrics first, some people write the music first. For me, it's always been the music first. In fact, it starts with the groove of the song, like the basic DNA, the groove of the song, and I build it from there. And you know, I'll get the music happening, I'll write melodies over the top, and right at the end, when I'm happy with all that, I'll kind of look at the lyrics and the lyrical content and add that in. And generally, I'll write in, you know, I don't write like the whole year. I've got to be in like a certain headspace to write, because I think writing's very different to touring and playing. You've got to be in a different place. So I normally, before we go into the studio, I'll set 1 to 2 months aside, just at home, just to write, you know, get a whole bunch of tracks ready for studio, you know, record it, and then obviously then I'm back into playing and performing mode. So generally that's the way it works, and that kind of works pretty good for me. One of my favorite things the older I'm getting is the craft of songwriting and trying to write great songs and trying to write the best songs you possibly can, right? So obviously I'll try and perform my own songs before I do kind of blues standards. Tonight we're throwing in a blues standard. We're doing a B.B. King song, an old kind of blues shuffle. And for me, the main thing is, if you're going to do a blues standard, is to try and make it your own. You know what I mean? Not trying to do a carbon copy of the original, because no one really wants to hear that. They want to hear you doing kind of your take on the song. So I don't often do it, but occasionally it's fun to kind of throw in a song you love, yeah. Okay, so on the new album that's coming out early next year, I went slightly different on the album. I mean, the same type of, style, but I produced the album myself. I've gone back to doing that, which I used to do. The album's got more of a slightly raw feel compared to the last two albums. Quite a dirty sounding album, quite a loud sounding album. But that's kind of where I am musically at the moment, and this is the album I've wanted to make for the last couple of years, and I finally made the album I wanted to make, which I'm really excited about. I think it sounds great. It's just finished being mixed and mastered, and cannot wait to start touring it. Yeah, cannot wait. I think it's the strongest songs yet. I think it's going to translate great live too. The reason I didn't produce the last couple of albums is because the very early albums I produced, where it was more traditional blues, I produced myself. I felt comfortable producing it myself. I wanted to kind of knock it up a gear. I didn't know how to do that, so I worked with a great producer in South Africa called Theo Kraus, and I did 2 albums with him, and I learned so much from working with a producer like that. So much about writing songs, about producing songs, about arranging music. And I think I spent so much time with Theo that I felt comfortable on this next album to say, cool, I'm gonna produce the album now, using what I learned from him. Yeah. So I think that was the main reason. Yeah. So obviously there is pressure because of the success of the last couple of albums, and now I'm producing it myself, that you need to have another successful album. So obviously that's a pressure in the back of your head, but I think you're kind of got to block that out, because as soon as you got that pressure, you start thinking differently as a producer, and you start kind of putting songs in directions that they shouldn't necessarily be in. So for me, I had to forget about that completely, and I had to say, I want to make an album that I would buy, If I heard that album, I would go out and I'd buy that album. That's all I want, right? So for me, that's all I thought about. And now we recorded it, and now listening back, now I can hear, is this album gonna work? And I believe it is gonna work, but you never know. This is the music industry, man. There could be the most successful album I've ever had. It could also be the most unsuccessful album I ever have. Only time will tell.
I'm a man.